my name is Lindsey Simpson, and welcome to the first ever episode of BAC, Bitches Analysis Corner. We created this space based off of a thread that started to exist in the West Region Bitches group, like a safe space to discuss the sport of quidditch that we all play and provide analysis to games that have already happened, because so many of the current analysis media platforms are very heavily centric in male voices. So this is our first episode ever. I'm going to apologize in advance for any things that go wrong or any mistakes that we have. We are doing a bare bones operation here, so I will let our guests introduce themselves.
All right, my name is Krieger. I've been playing competitively since 2014 fall season, from Wizards to UCLA, Gambits, Diablos, and this season, if it exists, Lost Boys. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And we're going to have a good time here today.
My name is Jamie Emma Luby. I'm going by Emma now. I am going into my 12th season, and I've played for UCLA, Anteaters, Gambits, and Lost Boys.
Hi, I'm Sofia del Vega. I've been playing since 2012, competitively since 2015 with Gambits and then UCLA. I have kind of taken a break from Quidditch since then, but I've still been involved in the community side of it all.
And today we're going to be analyzing the bronze medal match at Heroes vs. Villains Invitational, and that's against Lost Boys versus Terminus. This game I don't think has been released publicly anywhere, so this may be the first viewing of it for a lot of people. Yeah, I guess we'll just jump right into it. Okay. So the way that this is going to work for our viewers is basically these three, and I guess myself, have all watched this video already. Emma and I both were like on the sidelines, and I played in this game. I personally am not going to be analyzing the film that much. I will bring in my own thoughts and contributions as I was a player there, but this is really a space for these three to bring their insight into the game. So as it goes, we haven't really discussed a ton of like how we're going to be stopping, so just apologize again if things get a little funky of who's going to be speaking when, but we're just going to get this started. All right. I guess sounds.
That was a missed opportunity. I think that Kendrick on the run-up, number 12 on Lost Boys, obviously an incredible asset to the team. He's very fast. It sucks because while he was able to get the quaffle on the run-up and also fend off 3 chasers without any bludger support on there, that wasn't able to convert to a goal. But also, if you notice on that run up, Terminus managed to gain bludger control pretty easily. I think Sean Pagoda from Terminus managed to get to that bludger before Doug Tran, maybe like a split second before. And, that kind of set up Lost Boys to kind of be distracted. But at the same time, that kind of bludger fight right there also distracted the second Terminus beater. I want to say it was Tyrell Bird. And I think that might have been a mistake on Terminus's part right there, because obviously if that pass from Kendrick had connected to Lindsey, who was by the hoops at that point, that it would have been a goal. And that's something that, you shouldn't be taking 2 beaters off of defense in that type of situation.
Now, there's definitely a lot to go off of. If you get a goal from a run-up, it's a nice morale boost and always a great way to start the game. So if you're a beater on a run-up, you should be thinking quaffle almost immediately, especially if you know somebody on your team is fast. If, like, for the Lost Boys, if you know Kendrick regularly and consistently is fast and will likely win the run-up, you have to be ready to know, all right, he's going to need help as soon as possible.
And a lot of the time with the timing of that, as a beater, if you're running up to get that ball on brooms up, you almost want to, like, the most ideal situation is pick up that bludger and run a little bit past mid-pitch so that you can swoop around and take that beat on any of the other quaffle players on the opposing team who might be causing resistance to your quaffle carrier who's trying to bring it up. That doesn't always happen, but it is probably the most ideal situation to, like, run up, grab the ball, and then loop around so that you can watch your team with kind of a side view as they're approaching the hoops. And that would have been really helpful, I think, for Lost Boys.
Yeah, I think it kind of sucks because in that moment, after Kendrick had gotten the ball and Bird had also gotten the bludger pretty easily. You know, there was no fight for his bludger, and it was a close range beat right there. And I don't know, from the camera angle, it's kind of hard to tell, but it looks like he missed that close range beat, which for this, I think, level of playing, you know, these are some of the top teams in the country, that type of mistake shouldn't be happening at this level, I think. But obviously that kind of played to the distraction of Terminus's beaters to try to regain bludger control on that next play.
I also just want to point out to start that game on the Lost Boys side, it looks like it was Justin Fernandez as keeper, myself who missed that pass. In my own defense, it did tip the hoop, and I will take that as my own justification for messing that up so early, and I was open before. It's fine. I'm just not that great at quidditch. It's fine. And then Doug, Tran, and Max Portillo as the beater set for that, and then
Good control with them.
And Kendrick to start that game for us. I do not have the list of the starting Terminus players, and that's that.
If I could point out one quick thing, Lindsey did a really nice job, though, behind the hoops, being scrappy, getting to that ball, making sure that she was between the ball and the defense in whatever attempt you could to try and keep control of that ball.
Yeah, for sure. I think she was perfectly positioned. I think that if the ball hadn't tipped the hoop, that, you know, it would have gone straight into her hands. And especially with Terminus's defense style, they kind of like to press up a bit, and that leaves the hoops open. I think Ryan Davis, they were the ones covering hoops at the time. And if you saw in that video towards the beginning, they definitely came up a tiny bit too far and got distracted by the quaffle play. And that's why Lindsey was wide open for it. Obviously, if it hadn't hit the hoop, that definitely would have been an easy conversion right there. And I don't know necessarily if maybe having Tony on that pass on that brooms up would have been good, because I mean, obviously, as we saw, the beater play got completely distracted over in the other quadrant of the pitch. And that would have been either an easy drive for Tony, I think, just because of his size, but also, you know, he makes those perfect passes to people on the wing.
Yep.
I'm going to start it over just because something that I've noticed in watching analysis videos is people will talk about a lot of things that just happened and then move on, and then viewers can't go back and look at what was just spoken about. So I'm going to just start this from the top because it was so quick anyway. I won't do this for every set of speaking, but I feel like for a brooms up when so much happened at once, it's worth going back for.
Like it.
Who that beat misses.
See, if that pass had just come when I was over there, maybe it wouldn't fit the hoop. I'm just going to validate myself on this one.
So really good teamwork there with Doug and Max, getting control, looking out for each other on the far side of the pitch on Lost Boys.
Also, as Sofia mentioned previously, this is the game that Tony was not there for. We played Terminus twice in a row for our pool play game and our third medal game, which is this one, and he left, and we ended up with the same score on both games. So that speaks to two different elements, I guess.
So I want to point out something really quick, and maybe we could rewind it just a little bit. Right there is great. Yeah. As a beater, I'm looking at Max, and I believe that's Sean having a little back and forth. Notice that Doug steps up high, beats the other non-bludgered beater, and that leaves them open to go and cover the whole field in kind of like a circular motion almost. Yeah, that was nice beater play. It did kind of break down at the end. I think they got pulled too far apart, and then that's when Terminus was able to bring it closer to the hoops.
Yeah. And if we could pause it right here just before they do the subbing out, just because on that, just to kind of elaborate on what Emma was saying, I think that when Terminus passed the ball back out to the midline, Doug definitely stepped a bit too far up. He got a bit hasty with trying to beat the quaffle carrier. And I don't know necessarily what Max Portillo's and Doug's dynamic is on the pitch as a beating pair, because if I'm correct, Emma, you're usually Doug's beating partner when you guys play. So I think that it just definitely shows kind of your absence on the pitch, because I do think that you're usually kind of Doug's voice of reason when he gets a bit hasty.
I try to be. Thanks.
Yeah, but so I think that was kind of not the best move in that moment. But on another note, I can't help but notice having Cornelia Tiziana on. I think it was Quincy Hildreth out there. Yeah, if we go a tiny bit back, yeah. So we'll see right here that Cornelia is on him, but she isn't super tight to her man. That's personally not the type of defense I play, but I understand that many other chasers have different kind of playing styles right there. But I'm just wondering what the choice was there to have Cornelia on him versus, Lindsey, because I think at that point, this is no dig to Cornelia or Lindsey. Neither of you are really tacklers. And I think that having either of you at the hoop doesn't really make any significant difference. But I do think that with Lindsey's height advantage on Quincy, that might have made a change for her to be able to intercept that pass that came his way, especially because it was a lob. It was a very weak pass.
Yeah, I think the height would have been a nice switching the two of you. I think I agree with that. The height would have been useful because it was a lob over, and Lindsey does have those couple inches to jump up and intercept that. Really quick on Doug and Max, I think when Doug did get pulled far, he pressed the quaffle carrier, and that's when that pass happened. As he ran up to the quaffle carrier, he did get pulled out of position, and he was a little bit far away from the middle of the pitch, and he ended up opening up the entire left side of that field. And then Max was behind, doing a really nice job of handling the backfield there. Or did I say Doug? Max was behind, handling the backfield really nicely. But if Doug had not pressed over so far, then Doug could have been the one to press that pass and push for that pressure over there.
Yeah, I think Max did everything he could in that situation that he was kind of handed. I don't think he could have done that play any differently. I think that whole setup right there was definitely kind of the root cause from Doug kind of pushing up too far.
So during this substitute, Lost Boys have been starting with a dual male beater set most of this past season, so I usually sub out. So we have Michael Aguilera subbing in as male chaser, and Ashley Gore subbing in as Max's beater partner. Doug Tran subbed out. Those are your two new players on the field for the Lost Boys side.
Notice Ashley doing a really nice job of at least staying with her offense. Now she's kind of getting pulled far back a little bit. She could be closer to the ball carrier, but she goes and takes or attempts a beat there.
Yeah,
that really should have been a beat.
And looking back, if you want to go back really quick, looking at the quaffle piece of that.
So we have Fernandez has the ball up top now.
So he sees the no bludger and he pushes in, but there aren't very many great options there. Aguilera is kind of like just on a person, but he's not open. He doesn't create space. And Kendrick behind there, he's too close to the hoops. For somebody that's driving in, you have to make that pass, it'd have to be a really quick over the keeper pass. Even if he just backed up a bit and went more towards the corner, that's more of an open pass. And because there was so much chaos with the beaters, there's more he can do there, because now the hoops and the entire Terminus defense, all these people are in the way of the beaters. While there was like Ashley's missed beat, overall it turned out well and they got control.
Yeah.
But what happened was the fourth shot is really what killed the play.
So we've got beater on the right. I would almost have the Terminus beater on the far right. I believe that's number 1.
Yeah.
Pull his bludger farther to the side and take Max from almost the back rather than directly in front of him. That would give him a little bit more strength and pull Max's focus to the left rather than on the quaffle, because see, Max can just pick it up and go right again, and he's right there. Oh, yeah. I would have pulled that to the side.
Yeah, I looking at Terminus's roster, it looks like they only brought about 14 players to this tournament, and I definitely think that from their beating line, Sean Pagoda was really the one carrying their beating line for that.
Yeah.
So I don't know even if he really subbed out that much during this tournament. He seemed to be playing a lot of minutes.
He was.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a veteran player. He's been playing for as long as I can remember. You know, he's a really talented player both on chaser and beater. So I think that you can definitely tell that the disparity in skill level between Pagoda and his partners.
So number one, Tyrell, really a lot of strength in his beats. I think he could use that very well if he adjusts his positioning to the side on offense. So if he's listening, go from the side.
All right, John, I'm going to just go back a little bit for this fast break. Terminus had a lost the quaffle to Kendrick, which is always pretty disastrous to anybody. And
yes,
a no bludger, I believe, fast break situation.
It was a great recognition from him knowing that ball was way overshot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that was doing what he was expected. Kendrick did a nice job there.
I will say though, like for just an overall comment for this game, I do think that we see in probably the first half of this game that gameplay definitely is a bit sloppy. It definitely could be cleaned up. I think a lot of the goals that we see happen, while I think that a lot of it is due to good positioning by off-ball chasers, they aren't necessarily goals that come about because beaters made a driving lane or any sort of opportunity, or you know, other chasers were pulling away defense in order to create a lane. A lot of it tends to be defense slips up and offense takes advantage of that for a lot of this on both sides.
Really quick, I do want to point out the pure athleticism in Max there, taking that beat on the quaffle carrier on defense, and then just right here, running straight back. And it's not almost, I mean, yeah, Max is athletic, but it's that foresight and that field awareness and the idea of beating with your feet rather than your arm, using those fast, quick movements. He did an excellent job in that moment.
Also, just to reflect on what Sofia had just said as a player in this game, I completely agree. And I think if we were to watch the previous game, the gameplay is a little cleaner. And I think playing the same team back to back, especially as we started to lose players and they had started out with so few players, there wasn't the same heart and commitment in this game as it was the previous game. Because when you're going from playing the same very competitive team twice in a row, and especially with us losing Tony, I went into this game being like, well, this is over. That was so tough with Tony, and now we're losing one of our keepers. We have no shot at this. And I think that just reflects an end of the day game after playing the second team twice in a row. Definitely isn't a great look for either of us here.
Corny did a nice job there. Cornelia Zena in the red hairbands. She did a nice job of getting to the ball before the whistle was blown and making sure that things went in Lost Boys' favor if they needed to redo that. So here's Sean coming up from the middle. Again, Max has that really powerful fake. Good beat.
Two players to watch on Terminus that I think played really well together are Lee Hodge and Quincy Hildreth from Terminus. They consistently throughout this game, and we'll see it in future plays as well, just dominated quaffle play. I think, you know, they work really well together, but then also just as individuals, when it was just them solo on the pitch, could make those drives. I can't remember if any of them were on the starting line of this, but you know, once they're both in together, we see a lot of that, both, you know, in the first 15 minutes as well as the second half of this game. As Snitch comes on pitch, you know, they start making a lot of those goals, which is, I think, why Terminus, despite, you know, their small roster and, you know, I think limited beater capabilities, were able to stay in range even after a full day's play.
Yeah, they have a lot of grit and they have a lot of athleticism on top of having a really solid understanding of offensive and defensive chaser play.
He's a Team USA carrier, correct? Yes.
He's also the coach for tournament.
So this is a play that really should not have happened. As you guys see, Terminus is able to convert that into a goal, and that's one of the examples of kind of Terminus taking advantage of sloppy plays from the defense, or at this point, this was the offense, and that I think that is doubly worse. But I think at this level of play, we all know not to make large lobbing passes. We want to make sure that those passes are tight and quick to make sure that there's no interceptions. And I think here, I think Emma will probably elaborate on this a tiny bit more, is that there were no beaters on Kendrick. He is ball carrier. Yeah, I was going to say he's the ball carrier, and like that's usually someone that you want to make sure that you're covering. But beater play again kind of got all caught up, and Kendrick was by himself, and that's what kind of created that opportunity for him to lose the ball in the first place.
So if I could speak to that a little bit, I will say I am a huge proponent of being very aggressive on offense as a beater. I think that it makes plays, and it's just it's really how beating should be played on offense. It should be very aggressive, but there is a timing to be aggressive, and they did not connect with the timing with their chasers at all. So you see that Ashley starts off with the ball at mid pitch. She is with Kendrick, and she passes it right there to Max. And then here, Max goes ahead, Ashley sets up behind, and now we've got a really nice step by that chaser on Terminus. Sees the opening, goes for it, beater follows through, and Max and Ashley are all the way back and unable to really help with that. We've got some good beater play on Terminus. But yeah, it's really all about that timing. You need to make sure before you rush in on offense to be aggressive, you need to make sure that your chaser or your ball carrier has the space to run in after you, because if you mess up that timing, it's an easy fast break against your team.
And so this is a question to you Lost Boys, just because you guys have this insight, but who are Ashley and Max normally partnered with throughout the season, or at least this last season, since I know this was Ashley's first year on the team?
That was something we juggled around a little bit. We had a little bit of a I was planning to, well, I was originally Doug's partner, and then I stepped out for this season because of surgery. And so the way that it eventually ended up happening was Ashley slotted in with Doug, and then we continued the line with Max with Maya and Ryan with Allie, and I'm forgetting off the top of my head what the rest of what our line looked like, but it was usually Doug and Ashley, but we hadn't quite figured that out at this point. This was a little bit earlier on, I think, for us. Or no, there was some sort of a change that happened.
Yeah, we ended up mixing up the beater lines to bring different strengths in. And so basically with losing Emma on the field, we had to shift everything, and it became a lot of experimentation of like what pairs worked best together. But throughout the season, we mainly saw Max working with Maya and Doug with Ashley. And you can see later in the game is Max and Maya have an amazing few plays together. I think before this started, back when Max and Doug, when Doug subbed out, Max exited the field as if it was his turn. And I don't remember this game specifically, but I think Max was supposed to sub out, but Doug needed it for whatever reason, because you can see Max go to the sideline and then come back. So Ashley still subbed in as her next rotation. But reflecting back on that, realistically, if Doug was going to sub out, Maya should have subbed in, but that didn't happen because I think it was kind of a last-minute decision. But you can see later, which we'll get to, is Max and Maya's chemistry together is really great. But Ashley and Max are still kind of figuring it out because they don't play together as much as Doug and Ashley do together.
Yeah. I think that just highlights how important it is to have good chemistry in your beater pairs, because in that last play that Emma was highlighting, you see that Max kind of goes up and starts pressing pretty quickly before Ashley is fully in place. And, that's something that, over time you do build that type of understanding of how your beater partner is going to be thinking and what they're going to be doing before it even happens.
And if I could on that, I mean, Maya plays very methodically. Maya is taking in the field before she acts type of player. And then when she does act, she acts with the support of Max. And they tend to be very effective together, I think, because Maya slows Max down quite a bit. And they have to really analyze the situation before going in. And so you can really see that in that play. I mean, Max just goes for it and Ashley goes right in with him. There isn't a lot of analysis going into that.
No.
Really nice try for an interception there by number 11 on Terminus. Good beat on Max by number 9. Good recovery. That would have been a good recovery by Ashley. She had aimed that kick back toward the hoops.
And I know Aguilera got wrapped up, but during that drive, he drew in so much pressure that Corny was right there for the dump off. The drive and dish was perfectly set up. He could just get that ball, and maybe he couldn't because he got wrapped up and he just wasn't able to. But that's something you have to really be looking for: is you take 1 or 2 hits so that you can then dish it out for the goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that Terminus's advantage here in this game, I think, is their size and their willingness to make those hits and ability to make them. With Lost Boys, you definitely see that there is that willingness to tackle. I think later on this game, Brittany at some point is trying to make those attempts, but it's Terminus that really has that ability to make those hits. So they're willing and they're able to. And I think that there are maybe a handful of players on Lost Boys who are able to make those hits, but you definitely see much more of a reluctance on Lost Boys' part to make them. Whereas you see here, every time Lost Boys come in for a drive, it is a complete pile of people. And that's because they're going to go in, they're going to make those hits, and it has stopped multiple goals that Lost Boys have tried to make in this game.
I think a big part of that is that they generally play a 2-2 zone defense, which is really meant to stop the drive. It's so that you have people there it's not just man on man. You're ready to have multiple bodies there ready to hit. And you see that regularly throughout this, that's one of the reasons why they're able to hit so much.
And with all of that, the timing that Terminus has for those hits, I have to say, they're executing the timing very well. So you'll notice when in that earlier play, when Max went too far up on offense, Ashley was all the way too far up. The timing for that, for bodying up on the Lost Boys ball carrier, was wonderful. I mean, the timing right here, when you've got, I think it was number 11 steps out on the left side of the field to go up and body up one of the Lost Boys players who's carrying the ball. The timing is it's fast, and they go for the opening. So they're able to see that opening. That I think that comes with that zone defense.
And I think 11 regularly, Jacob Parker, has done a lot of great hits. He's the one that hit early on that wrapped up Kendrick. And Kendrick did have time to get it off. But what happened was he got that ball carrying arm really quick and was able to lock it down so that Tyrell Bird, number 1, was able to just easily get that beat and have that run up. Regularly, Parker is doing a lot with the hitting. I mean, with such a small roster, you're going to see the same names coming up, but he's doing a phenomenal job defensively.
I believe that's Doruk on Lost Boys on their left side of the pitch. I would almost suggest he plays that zone a little bit farther back.
What was the primary defense y'all were trying to run for Lost Boys? It looked like y'all were also trying to do a 2-2 zone for the most part.
We run, or this past season at least, we've worked on running a wall defense. So we typically have a 3 up top, and then depending on where the quaffle carry is on the opposing team, the other side will drop to hoops. So it's like a rotating 2-2 zone as opposed to but that will.
It is. Go ahead.
I was gonna say sometimes that changes based on if they have a threat player. On the backside, we'll have one person go to a man, and then the other 3 will play will play like that, alternating zone. So it does change based on the players that they're sending across the field.
I have to say, it feels uncomfortable to play as a beater because you're discouraged from putting a bunch of high pressure on the ball carrier, or at least not discouraged, but usually that's not the option that you want to take. But when they get closer to the hoops, gives you a lot of room to run around and make those quick beats to stop the offense. So notice Doruk here. Really good wrap. Ryan had a really high beat. It should, in my opinion, have been a tap beat. Quick tap off the back of that player, pick up the ball, run straight for the ball carrier. Because, okay, so here we are. Doruk's got him covered on the ground. We've got a beater coming in. Oh, that was Ashley who had that really tall, high beat. Ryan picks it up, and yeah, if that beater were a quick tap beat and the ball were in their hand right away, I think they could have had a little bit more efficacy on that defense.
Yeah, I mean, the Terminus beaters, number 10, I think Mary Cueva, and number 9 was Sean. They really helped keep the play alive for Terminus. They
I agree.
really hit that dog pile hard. And unfortunately, the beat from Lost was just bounced really poorly, so that they were able to just wall off them even having a chance to get back into it.
Yeah.
So I think that Justin and Aguilera just subbed off, but in that last play especially, you know, I don't think both of them needed to go up to that pile. I think that there was a lot of watching, if you see, where they don't really know how to support. You see Justin Fernandez pulling up right there. And that leaves just one person at the hoops. And that's how come Terminus was able to make that drive after they picked up the ball, because it was open. I think that there needs to be a lot more awareness that if there's that pile, really the only people who should be coming up to there, because I think most people are very good at turtling a ball, is the beaters, to kind of make sure that any opposing players that are trying to pile them are beat, so that way your team retains the ball in that situation.
So yes,
I like.
I was sort of just to keep up with the who's on the field for Lost Boys side at least. We had George Williams just subbed in as keeper for Fernandez, and Princeton, one of our co-captains, is now on the field as well as 21.
Really quick, this doesn't have to be something we go back for, but Ryan was very far up on the pitch in the other side of the pitch on that offense, way before his ball carrier was ready to be there with him. I think that's an adjustment that Ryan should have made. Really good defense there by Doruk.
And that last play, if you want to rewind it really quick, that was
the last offense or defense?
This one offense. This is a really great play, although it didn't convert, by 34, which I believe is Lee Hodges, and 22 Logan Hartman. The cut and wraparound was perfect in the exact right space, and for Hartman to see that and make that pass was like phenomenal. Unfortunately, it didn't connect for a goal, but that's like that's an S level play. That is like high percentage and very well done for them.
George has a nice way of keeping his side of the field controlled.
I'm surprised that we didn't see George Williams playing more minutes. You know, I definitely think that he is a high keeper in this sport and playing for you. And, you know, I feel like he's only gotten better at playing, even with 2 ACL tears.
George is incredible. My only problem I had with this game is the way that our female chaser line lines up is when I should be subbing when George subs in, because I play with him. But for full transparency, George had the plague. He had like the flu this tournament. After our Diablos game, he was like in tears because he couldn't breathe. So he did not have a lot of minutes this tournament, but part of that had to do with genuinely like how sick he was, and was part of the reason why we brought Tony on board, because George was starting to get sick and we knew that we didn't have Michael Richardson. So we had Justin Fernandez as our only like real key keeper. We have Miguel on our team, who is incredible, but he's been playing chaser most of the season. So pulling in Tony once we lost Michael and George just started to get sick was part of that reason. But that is a reflection of his lack of minutes in this game. Was normally he's like, I'll play all game, every game. In this tournament, he was like, had to ask for breaks, which is pretty rare for him.
That they actually use their reset, so I feel like a lot of teams, because they have a limited amount, miss that or don't think about using their resets. So it's one of those simple things that you don't have to force to play. Bring it back, readjust, move forward.
I want to point out the second or third time that Terminus has made that interception at the midline and had a completely empty pitch to run back to. I think that's one. I think Terminus identified how the Lost Boys were playing and what those loopholes were. Because when it works the first time, if you don't correct it the second time, your opponent is going to take advantage of that. This is some old Quidditch stuff, but I remember back at like World Cup 9, I think it was, Gambits was playing, I want to say, the Warriors at the time. And I think I made 5 goals that game, not because of just different opportunities, but Tony and I literally playing the same pattern, which was just me cutting out, cutting into the goal, and shooting. And you would think after the second goal that Warriors would have adjusted, and that was their mistake and their downfall in that game. And you see here that Terminus was taking advantage of that loophole. And honestly, I think that if they had had a full roster this day, that you definitely would have seen Terminus be the winner of this game by a long shot.
Yeah, there is a lot of sloppy play on in the transitions with Lost Boys. The transition from offense to defense, from defense to offense, that's where things break down. As a part of the team, we really need to work on our transitions watching this game. I mean, that's something that needs to be focused on, because you can very clearly see it's like in between the keeper zones that play starts to fall apart with Lost Boys.
And that play specifically that we just saw, Cornelia made a decision to set a pick as opposed to being an open option, which led to Princeton being the only tangible option available, and that was a long pass for George, and it was an easy interception. And I love it off ball. I am a promoter of a pick, but I think George of all people won't need a pick. He's not going to get wrapped up by someone enough to need that. And I think that being another open option may have been a better choice to not having that cross field pass from George to Princeton. It would have been a better chance for us to connect on offense.
And I know we were just talking about sloppy transitions for Lost Boys, but this next play that's about to go on the fast break, George and Princeton have a perfect give and go.
Yep, they do.
Like very classic, on point, like by the textbook. Passes it to Princeton, he absorbs the pressure, gets it right back to George, and then goal. And it's just very important to always realize that it's the simple things and the basic things sometimes that really just make things work.
This is a no bludger, I believe.
And yeah, I was going to say Ryan did a nice job there of clearing out chasers, or not clearing them out, but making sure that chasers had to touch their hoops before they could come into defense. They're all the way on his side. He's going to make them get beat. I mean, that's what you should do as a beater. If they're on your side, if they're going to let you come close, you take them. I mean, it's a quick beat. And I don't think enough beaters do that. And I think it can be a little bit of a laziness thing, I think, as a beater. And I think it's something that you really want to try and do when you can.
I think there's also just that idea that, if it's a no bludger situation, offense should just score. They should be able to do it, but any help is we'd love any help as a chaser. Even a simple tap, getting one person out, that's one less body to go through, because going through people's tiring.
As this is a analysis group that is meant to kind of uplift voices that aren't, cis male, it's kind of disappointing to see that we couldn't see Terminus at their full strength, because I'm pretty sure from this roster, there are only 4 girls and 1 non-binary player on their team. And I think that with such a small roster, those girls were subbing in and out. And to not see them fully utilized to the best of their ability, you can't really make too much analysis on how they played this game. And that's a large part due to the fact that, I'm sure Terminus at this point was also trying to conserve the energy of their girl players.
Yeah. On that note, to point out the beater at mid pitch right now on Terminus, Mary Cueva had a nice recovery on her offense. They got control from Lost Boys, I believe, and she was right there to pick up that ball, right there to take it back, and right there ready to support, I believe that is Sean, as they continue.
Mary came from Emerson College, for the record. That's fine.
Yeah, and I mean, her field vision is clearly very good. Look, she goes exactly to where the ball is. Oh man, yeah, she's an excellent beater. That was a nice kick beat by Ashley. Right back in, looks where the balls are. She definitely beats with her feet. Sorry, I am very focused right now on Mary Cuevas because she is very good. Terminus loves to pressure from the middle on offense with their beaters. I don't think that's the most effective strategy.
I also think just number 12 there, Andrea Camerano, had like really great positioning, and she really stuck with the play. I don't know if that was a pass or a shot or one of those situations where it could be either, but she just stuck with the play and made sure to get that goal. And I feel like a lot of times there's just a lot to account for just hustling and getting to the ball, making sure things that may not have gone well is you make up for it and make it good, make it a goal.
What I mentioned earlier for subs is now Max and Maya. Maya's number 23 over here, and Max is over there. They've just subbed in together. Maya is a second-year player and is very small and is doing incredible at playing at this high caliber. So I just wanted to put that out there of her experience based on that.
On the note of Maya, she's a quick learner, and I think playing with Max has helped her really bring out her full potential. And you'll see right now, not only is she protecting Princeton as the ball carrier, but every now and then she does seem to connect with Max on the opposite side of the field. And they have a really nice beater relationship there. And it's something to take note of on offense right now. Nice little, quick little beat. Dang.
That was a goal by Miguel. I'm not officially keeping score, but I believe the score right now is 4-5 for people following Terminus. I could be wrong because I haven't marked it down every time, but I believe that's where we're at. The final score of this game was overtime.
Miguel had a nice quick fake to the hoop and then was able to score off of that. It was a good little move. So something I would change about the beater setup here for Terminus is I would almost say, although that was effective, they might want to swing a little bit wider as they come up, because that pulls the beaters on defense, it pulls their eyes away from the quaffle. If you're going straight in and then you come around and swing for an isolation, then you aren't pulling the defensive beater's eyes as much as you could. So swing wide and pull their attention away from the quaffle. Nice job by number 1.
We just had Justin Fernandez sub back in as keeper, and Anthony Hopkins is now on the field at 53 with Miguel and myself. Again, as I mentioned earlier, that was my only issue with this game is George had been in for a bit, and then I had finally subbed in for Cornelia and had like 2 looks with George, which is the keeper that I'm like designated to be playing with, which I think led to an issue of some just gameplay stuff overall.
I want to point out I think that was Anthony Hawkins who subbed him. He's been playing for a couple years, and it's amazing to kind of see his growth as a ball carrier. When he first started, he definitely was the type of person who would just drive the ball, never really pass it off, always kind of take too many risks with the ball. And to see in this game the passing that was happening on that offense right now was kind of refreshing to see, just because it shows that like he can still be really good and help kind of direct how the play is going to go without needing to hold on to the ball the entire time. And you can kind of see that. I think he passed off to one of the girl chasers that was behind the hoop when he was getting crowded too much. Oh, it's you, Lindsay.
It was. You can tell the difference between me and Cornelia because I have giant braces on my knees that don't work anymore.
See, when Miguel made that drive in, and like in general, there's a lot of just standing still from the off-ball chasers. There's not much movement, and you want to be able to move to give him options and also just keep the defense on their toes. If they mark in their heads, all right, this person's there, and they're just going to be staying there, it's a lot easier to get to them and have them covered.
I do want to say really quick, going into that offense, Max and Maya had some nice control over corralling the defense into a good place to be for the offense's sake.
I want to make this note, and you can just let this play kind of go out, but this is kind of just a general tip to anyone who's listening when it comes to utilizing your girl players behind the hoops. A lot of times when girls start playing Quidditch, the first place that they're told to go to as kind of like a rule of thumb when they play is, behind the hoops. And I think sometimes beginner players take that a bit too literally, regardless of your gender. If you're told to play behind the hoops, a lot of the times people will literally stand right behind the hoop or maybe further back, but that's only really beneficial in certain angles. And I think that something that either these girl players or maybe even team leadership should take note of is teaching your team to kind of rotate as the play is going. If your ball carrier is shifting over to the left side of the pitch and you are now completely obscured in the back, you don't need to necessarily go closer to the ball carrier, but you should swing in front of the hoops that time, because that way, if they are making that long pass, you're in front of the hoop now and you can score. A lot of the times when people tell that last chaser to kind of go behind the hoops, it's because you're trying to make yourself as an option where you aren't being guarded to get past to. But, if you're too far away, then you're not being utilized properly. And as a player, you need to be able to identify that kind of difference in the play. Like, you need to be able to determine on your own. And this is something that I know that a lot of players with confidence issues on the field kind of have trouble with. But this is something that every player should be doing. And that's being able to recognize when your ball carrier is able to pass to you and when they're not. You shouldn't rely necessarily completely on their intuition. You should be trying to position yourself best for any sort of pass. So if you're being crowded, you should move away from them. If you are completely out of gameplay, you should find a way to reposition yourself in a way that maybe you're not going to get straight into the play and coming out of position, but in a better spot, so that way the role that you're playing on your team is still going to be utilized to the best of its ability.
It's a really good point.
I just want to note on this next play. So Terminus tries to napalm, or I don't know what anybody calls it these days. Everybody has their own term. But leaves the bludger and tries to just tackle and get rid of the bludger. Maya, and I believe Max is still on the field, right? Do a great job of stopping it. Maya gets in his way, lets Max get this easy beat, which leads to Max doing a high press, which is perfect. There's literally no bludgers on the Lost Boys half of the field. But if Max is going to go up and force those passes and make that high press, you need chasers with them. You need to pull tight and have the chasers come up. So there's Tyrell got beat, and Max is making this press. He's about to step up. He recognizes there's no one there. He makes it hard to step, but Miguel's still so far away. And even on that chaser that passed to, Kendrick wasn't close onto them. So they make that pass back and are able to keep control of the ball and even lead to a goal when there literally was no bludger on the entire side. You had 2 bludgers versus 0. That should never be a goal for the team with 0 bludgers.
If I could, that is a very, very good point. You have to make sure there's not only communication between beater pairs, but there is communication between beaters and chasers, because when you don't have that communication, or you don't know, or chasers don't know what to look for, then you miss those moments, and that costs you a goal. That was an easy goal. There was nobody defending those hoops back there. It was a quick straightaway, fast break in the hoop for Lost Boys if they had taken advantage of that moment. And all it is a quick fake, follow the ball, maybe another fake, follow the ball, beat. And as soon as you should beat that player, there should be a chaser right with you to pick it up and sprint to the hoops. Yeah, that was definitely a missed opportunity.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of teams do try to at least practice that, when they're in non-competitive settings. And I think that there are very few teams that are able to implement that type of press very seamlessly during a game. You see it sometimes in a lot of the higher level games, and when you see it work perfectly, it's beautiful to watch. And I think that maybe one mistake that a lot of teams make is that when they're practicing in practice, there isn't a lot of explanation of the scenario in which this would be happening and why you are doing it. A lot of the times it's like, okay, we're running this drill. When I say press, we all press. And sometimes beaters have different terminology for how they work out their own plays. And so it can become confusing. And I think that, you know, this is not a tactic that beginner teams are going to be able to implement, because a lot of it is going to come down to trust, to chemistry between your teammates. Your team needs to be able to understand each other and how you guys all play in order to make it seamless. When I played on the Gambit, we called it the Lone Star because Lone Star liked to slow ball a lot back when I was playing. And I think we did it very successfully a couple times at BAC City. And it was just like, it only took once for us to realize that it actually worked. And that gave us more confidence to be able to do it again and again during that tournament. And it came about because we practiced it a lot. Like our practices that season were solely focused on for beating Lone Star. We analyzed film together. So it wasn't just we were practicing the move itself, but understanding how Lone Star played, because that helped us envision how we would press. If Steve DiCarlo said on the field, okay, we're going to press now, we all understood what that meant. There wasn't any hesitation because we'd all seen how Lone Star played. We knew that the reason why he was saying it was because of Lone Star shifting into a certain way. And so I definitely think that for any beginner teams out there that kind of get discouraged by this, this is something that takes seasons of practice. And, you know, especially in Quidditch now with so much turnover and new teams being created and teams kind of falling apart, at least out here in the West, you know, I think that taking advantage of that in a season where you do have that type of stability, if you are in a year where you didn't lose that many players, I think that's the year that you should be trying to implement these type of more advanced techniques, because they do work. And it also puts you on the national level kind of in that discussion of showing that your team is able to maneuver these complex tactics on high level teams. And that, I just want to kind of throw that out there just because I know that a lot of times people will say pressing doesn't work, or, you know, it's really hard to do, but it really comes down to team chemistry and, you know, practice.
I really do want to say one more thing on that. If anybody is watching this, listening to this, and they want to find good footage of that, although I am a little biased being on Lost Boys, I think the season of 2017 to 2018 for Lost Boys was the best team in the country to execute that specific strategy. If you go back and look at film of Lost Boys 2017-18, although they were not the strongest, or we were not the strongest team in the country at that time, we were, I think, probably the most seamless execution of that specific strategy with the players coming up and then going into that. So find those videos and watch them if you want to learn, because I think those are going to be a good thing to look at.
To point out, we have new subs here. Brittany Eisner just subbed in. We switched to a double male set with Nicholas Stensing and I believe Michael Vaughn have entered the field. So it's, I don't know who our last chaser is. Oh, and Kendrick's the last chaser for Lost Boys.
I just want to say keep an eye out for Tad Walters or the sick dance who's coming up. Oh, that's it. Beautiful. Love to see it.
So Nick Stensing does a nice job in the beginning of that, like when he just subs in, of getting right on the opposing beaters and trying to prevent them from doing what they want to do. He is very aggressive in getting up against them, and he does a nice job of distracting them from their goal. Yeah, so Nick is in the number 19 jersey right there.
Calling out Azim Hussein, former national champion coach and now current Lost Boys coach, and future national champions if COVID hadn't happened.
Working with him as a coach was such an enlightening season. Oh my God.
You think COVID happened to prevent Azim from ruining his national championship?
So sad.
Honestly, maybe.
We would have brought Grant back, and, you know, that would have been the turning point for us.
Woo. That's Brittany back there, yes? Okay, she had her broom out.
It went to a pass to Brittany, who got beat at the same time.
Got it.
a quick pass to Kendrick from it was quick to Kendrick, quick to me, quick to Brittany, and then Brittany and I both got beat, and George and Kendrick were out of the play because they've also been beat. So we were up river without a paddle, whatever that saying is.
It looks like Terminus just did a subline, so there are new people in here.
So I am going to almost entirely switch my focus to beater play. I mean, that's what I'm doing anyway, but. Nick, in that situation, should have gone for Seeker. Thankfully, Seeker did not catch the snitch in that moment.
I do know Terminus is up by now, but I don't know the exact score, but Terminus is
true.
certain winning.
And just for clarification for who's seeking right now, we have number 1 on Terminus, which is, I believe, Tyrell Bird.
Yeah.
And on Lost Boys, it's Fernandez, number 6.
Yeah.
That was a great
extensing subbing out.
On offense by, I think it was mainly George and Kendrick had some great chemistry back there. I'm just going to go back to that because it's going to be a stoppage anyway. But well, I had the ball, took a pass to Brittany, which went to a pass to George, which went to a pass to Kendrick, and a goal. It was a lot of good ball movement there, considering how it was really just a mess.
So quick thing to look forward to. I believe there is some really nice beater play that happens between Doug Tran and Max Portillo as partners right now. Although in the beginning of the game, we didn't see a lot of chemistry between the two of them. When they come out on snitch on pitch, usually they are pretty together. And we're going to see a little bit of that as they play snitch on pitch pretty soon. Not sure.
I don't know if it's this snitch on pitch or during overtime, but Terminus makes some beautiful passing that leads to some goals here that I very much enjoyed watching when I was initially doing my notes. Yeah, beautiful passes.
The symmetry on that fast break between like Quincy Hildreth and Lee Hodges was just perfect. Like Quincy, while he got taken down, Lee Hodges knew to just be right with him so that even though he got stopped, pass right to him into a goal. That's every time a fast break happens, you need to have someone with you. Even though you have a great player that you think, oh, they should be able to score on their own, you always need somebody there to help because you never know what happens.
Looking at snitch on pitch, I want to point out Terminus beaters have been doing an excellent job of bubbling around the snitch to prevent Lost Boys beaters from getting in there and obviously Lost Boys Seeker from getting in there. That was
I selfishly want to
attempt.
Because I was really proud of this play. I want to go back and watch it again.
Oh, where you got passed and then passed, I think it was Brittany?
Yeah. So I get the pass there. I knew there were two people in front of me, but I see Brittany open and she gets the goal. And that was a really good moment.
That was a perfect pass and like perfect ball movement.
Really
That
proud of that one.
situation.
That's my
Emma, do we know who's on pitch right now beating for Terminus?
So Sean Paguada, and then number 30 is going to be Ryan Davis, they, them, I believe.
Yes.
So I have to say Ryan is doing an excellent job of shadowing Sean. And Sean, I would say, is really leading this snitch on pitch in this moment. Sean has always been, since I started playing against him when he was on USF in Florida and I was on UCLA, he's just an incredibly smart player and he does have a very good understanding of snitch on pitch. And that really shows in this. I mean, right now, up to about this point, Terminus beaters have been outplaying Lost Boys beaters. And it's because of Sean and his positioning on the field. And Ryan is doing an excellent job of following Sean. I don't know, is Ryan still on the pitch? I'm having a hard time finding beaters now, but Ryan has been doing an excellent job. No longer on the pitch, but yeah.
I think this is probably the highest ranked team that Sean has been on in most years. And, he's a really talented player. And I just wonder, outside of this tournament, who his normal beating partner is. because, you know, obviously Terminus is highly ranked, and I think that this roster wasn't super reflective of the talent that they had. And, you know, I think that while Sean is doing a great job, you know, kind of holding the team together, you know, with their beater play, I just would have loved to have seen him in his element where, you know, he isn't having to carry everyone, where he's able to work off of another equally talented beater in these situations. Just because, you know, I love to see players playing ceilings when it comes to Quidditch, just because, especially, he's been playing for so long, and I don't really think he's missed a beat.
To absolutely no insult to Terminus seekers, but if they had had someone who, like, Terminus had locked down Snitch for so long in that game, and we should have not had a chance to catch that Snitch. Like Terminus, I don't know what seekers they had there or not there that, like, could have changed the outlook of this game, but I remember in the first game it was a very similar situation. We caught for overtime as well after being down 30 because their beaters did a really good job of shutting us out. And the Lost Boys, this whole season have been lucky with our skill of seekers, because they've, like, between Brandez and Kendrick has really been the reason that we've had so many W's this whole season. And, like, that catch, we can go back to it. But based on the reflection of the rest of the Snitch on Pitch game, we shouldn't have had this game. Like, their beaters had us locked down for most of Snitch on Pitch.
Something I really, really want to point out that has just been going on and on since Snitch on Pitch came out, or Snitch on Pitch started, and I'm going to eat my words a little bit. I said Doug and Max had a lot of chemistry together on the field. They, in this situation, really have not showed that. In this Snitch on Pitch, they're separated. One beater will go in for an attempt on a unified Terminus beating squad, and then they'll get beat, and they'll go back, and then the other beater will switch places with them, and you see this back and forth swapping of the beaters on Lost Boys. And throughout most of the Snitch on Pitch, you really see the Terminus beaters are a unified front against the Lost Boys beaters. And like you're saying, that is leading up for so many opportunities for their seeker. And then just one more quick thing, they're doing a good job of making the Lost Boys beaters run, tiring the Lost Boys beaters out. They're forcing Lost Boys beaters to make those hard beats against them, which causes that ball to bounce. And then they have to go run after their ball. When they run after their ball, another beater can come back in, but it's that back and forth kills you in Snitch on Pitch, because Snitch on Pitch is so high intensity. So, I mean, huge props to Terminus, because they are up to this point outplaying Lost Boys beaters in almost every way. Yeah, so snaps.
Also, Emma, right now on the field, I believe it's not even Doug. I think he wanted to seek this game, and so I think we have Michael Vong and Max on the field, because Michael Vong's wearing pants, and Doug would never wear pants.
Good call.
So we'll just go back here a little bit to see what the situation is. Michael Vong had just been with Max. It looks like they both have control. Third bludger's there, and Brandis gets the catch. So Lost Boys at that point down 3.
I think one mind when watching the quaffle play, or when you're in quaffle play, while Snitch on Pitch is happening, you're not getting a lot of beater support. So the fundamentals really just keeping spacing is key, because there are a lot of times where I'll see a lot of offenses where it'll just won't end in a goal. But if you take your time, you should be able to pick it apart, be able to work on a way to make things happen, as opposed to trying to force it. Because at this point, every goal really matters, and you don't want to have an offense that doesn't end in a goal, especially in a snitch range game. You want to make sure those are guaranteed goals, and whatever you need to do to do that, whether it be passing out, slowing it down, you need to recognize that you don't have to make shit happen right away. Taking your time is key.
I want to point out how intensely difficult this move that Sean Paquata just did is. If we could rewind like 5-6 seconds, right here is perfect. So yeah, he's running for the green bludger. Oh, you know what? It's right before that. I'm sorry.
He just made a trade with Max, and
he made a trade with Max, but in that trade, here we go. he ducks underneath Max's ball as he throws. And that is like, that's a high tier beater move. You do not see that from beaters who are inexperienced. I mean, just like the athleticism of that on top of the foresight, on top of the field awareness and like being able to size up your opponent, that is incredible beating, like full stop.
That was a great play by Princeton and Miguel, who stopped that offense from happening, but they're going to go score, I think, here anyway. Ooh, maybe not. It was a great beat by Michael Vaughn, but I want to go back to that. That was a really good teamwork move. Princeton had, I think this is Lee again. Princeton makes the wrap here, and the pass goes to
That's a good wrap.
Peter, player, but Miguel has tapped in so quickly, was able to recover this between Miguel and I, and Miguel gets the ball back. And that's just like when you don't have any beaters on defense, that's what you have to be locking in is those shutdowns, and it certainly worked. Then Michael Long has a great beat here, so it worked out.
It was really great
Yeah.
to recognize that he was far enough away that he couldn't help Seeker right away, that he might as well help Beater, especially because you're at a point where one goal might be the difference between winning, tying, or losing.
Yep.
So this is where I am starting to see beaters on Lost Boys come together a little bit more. They are working together more efficiently, or they just in the last couple seconds. And well, they're subbing now, but
Now that's done with his leggings. And,
yeah.
I think Anthony has subbed in as keeper, which is just a reflection of how sick George was this game. There's no way he wouldn't have played it that after taking a break anyway. But Anthony's keeping. We still have Fernando seeking, Doug and Max chasing together, and it looks like Aguilera actually just subbed in.
But look at the side looks by Doug. He's looking to his left to connect with Max. Now they're making that connection happen, and they are able to more effectively take on this beater. Notice they're corralling that beater into one area a little bit. Max switches back to defense, really smart move.
So this is just an observation, and maybe whoever ends up listening to this could probably answer this question, because I don't think any of us really are that familiar with Terminus's normal season lineup. But I think ever since Snitch on Pitch happened, Ryan Davis subbed in to start playing beater. And I think Sean and Ryan, they have been playing incredibly well together. And that's something that we didn't see in the first 18 minutes of Quaffle play. I think Ryan was playing as either a keeper or chaser throughout the most of this game, and it wasn't until Snitch on Pitch that they switched into the beating role. But I think that Ryan, out of all the beaters that Sean was playing with on pitch this game, has been the only one who's been able to kind of keep up with Sean's playing style. So I kind of wonder if during most normal situations for Terminus, if Ryan is normally a beater, but I don't know if that is, maybe they're just that talented. I'm not sure. But
yeah, they are doing a nice job of working with Sean, and I think that would be an excellent pairing in normal game, not Snitch on Pitch. That's a really good point.
I do notice that Bird was beating a lot originally, but now became Seeker, so I'm sure that had a key impact on who their beater rotation went into.
For sure.
We just saw a pull by Kendrick. I misspoke earlier. I was referring to a different game when I said that Fernandez had the catch on this. Kendrick just had the catch. The Lost Boys were down 3 at this point and caught to go into overtime. I'll just go back to we can watch what's happening with beaters. So Kendrick's over here basically alone. Terminus isn't really involved at all.
There it is. That's nice.
So that happened while Doug was over here trying to get the last bludger, and I don't even know. It looks like this is Ryan over here who is on the other side of the. So I'm not sure how that look happened if neither of our beaters were there, but I mean.
That would be either Terminus was focused on defense and should have pulled. I don't think we had control, so should have pulled one of their beaters at the very least over to the snitch.
I think if you're looking at this footage, you see Sean on the left-hand side. He got beat and had to tag back in. And I think that Ryan had just barely recovered the bludger and started running back when Kendrick pulls.
Yeah.
So
Good call.
it definitely looks like bludger play all got pulled over to the left-hand side of the pitch, which even though Lost Boys weren't there to protect Kendrick, it gave him the kind of look to get that pull.
Yeah, unfortunate timing for Terminus with the beater dropping their ball or being tagged out. Oh my goodness. Yeah, unfortunate timing on the Terminus part and good timing on Kendrick's part.
But having like their beaters near their side to help possibly stop a goal would have been the difference between a loss and an overtime. If there's a 30 defense that
They're going to pull back to Quaffle.
yeah, that you should think, all right, if snitch play has been going on for a while, that to ensure that I'll rather take a tie than a loss.
Yeah.
So this is
Or
the
overtime.
start of overtime. So our second overtime in a row with Terminus.
I'd like to point out that Ryan Davis is now playing Seeker, which means that they've now played, I think, Keeper, maybe Chaser, definitely Beater, and now Seeker all in one tournament, which now definitely makes me confused about what they play during normal tournaments, or maybe they play all positions during normal tournaments, but that definitely at least reinforces the idea that they definitely are a talented player.
Talented player. Oh, go ahead, Krieger.
I was just saying, I love that they just stepped up to the plate and said, whatever the team needs, I'll get it done. I'll do my best.
And especially when you come to a tournament with only 14 players, hell yeah, you need people to step in and do what needs to be done for the team. So major props to Ryan Davis. Not only are they playing multiple roles, but I mean, they're doing them well. So I think they shine as a beater, sticking out. Just because of their field awareness, but good job.
Especially after Sofia mentioned earlier their lack of female players they brought in to have a non-binary player with that much range really can help with a low roster like they came with.
Yeah.
All right, let's start some overtime. Ready? So it looks like for Lost Boys, we had Michael Vong and Doug starting with myself, Kendrick out there, and maybe Corny. I can always see me as my braces.
I want to give some insight to this really quick. Can we pause?
Yeah.
I believe if this is the game that I'm thinking, I want to say Azim and I had a conversation, and maybe with the beaters as well, about starting this a little bit differently. And rather than having Max and Doug play together, Michael Vong and Doug play. Michael Vong, if you've ever seen him play, first off, he's incredible. Second, he has a calming effect on the field, and he really knows how to pull players together and bring the best out of everyone. I think that was probably, watching the rest of the game, that may have been an excellent call on Lost Boys' part. So that's my point.
I also noticed that at the beginning, Doug immediately went looking for Quaffle.
Yeah.
Which is much more, which is needed after the first run up of the game.
Okay, so we've got Ryan Davis and Justin Fernandez going for Seeker. I'm switching my focus purely to Seeker right now.
Looks like Kendrick just had a quick goal on the sideline.
Michael Vong really doing a nice job of handling the beater situation. Holy cow, he's good. Doug, that's a good move on his part. Taking that beat with the extra bludger. Good focus on the Seeker. Notice he turns his head, looks for Michael. They talk to each other.
Lost Boys have scored once, and Terminus has scored once for Quaffle play. So we're tied in overtime.
And again, Sean has another one of those incredible beats where he ducks. Honestly, I don't know if he actually beat that one, if he made that hit. But just being able to do that enough where you can try it multiple times in a game speaks to some pretty great talent.
I just want to give like a quick shout out to Terminus in general, that you said this was the second game in a row that
Whew.
to come with a small roster and still stick with it in
Yeah.
general is
They're insane.
great. Like,
Yeah, I
it's
think
so hard to travel literally across the country with a small roster and play games like that.
2 OTs in a row. We were at 19 players. That's 5 more bodies on our sideline, and they still kept it together. So we had another poll. I think this was called good. So I'll go back to like how that happened. But it was Kendrick again.
And that looked like textbook perfect goal. The connection between the ball carrier and the pass, or the person catching that ball. I mean, look, that's just beautiful. That's how you want to make every fast break look.
So I think what happened is for that play, they called the goal after the poll, and because I think it was still 2. I think that would have put Terminus above us.
Yeah, that's close. Lost Boys, sloppy first half, picks it up a little bit up through the end. Beater play still a little bit sloppy up through the end. Snitch on pitch was pretty disconnected, and then pulled it around for overtime and had a little bit more connection with beaters. But my gosh, Terminus with some amazing plays there, and pass were timed before the snitch. That would have been a win.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said. Overall, watching that game, I think I was disappointed in the gameplay. I think that this was not a top game that I would ever recommend someone to watch. but I think
I wanted to commentate this game. I need that point to be made.
I thought it would be the most interesting game to commentate, because something that our group discussed before filming this was coming into this tournament, Tony being rostered on the Lost Boys. A lot of the analysts picked Lost Boys as doing more favorably this tournament because of Tony and solely because of him. And so kind of watching one of the games where Tony was not there and kind of comparing that gameplay with, the Terminus game where he was there. I know Lindsey had some input on that, but I think that it does kind of make a point that maybe it's not necessarily the fact that Tony was on the team, but also the fact that George was sick and the fact that Emma was healing from surgery and therefore
I wish I could have played.
And she is a first string beater. Like 2 of Lost Boys' main first string players were not at their best / not playing. On top of the fact that when they did have Tony left for this game. So I would not picture this Lost Boys team that we saw playing in this game as representative of Lost Boys' ability. The same way I would have looked at this Terminus roster and not have judged Terminus based off of this roster. But overall, I think that if this had been full force rosters, I still would have given this game to Terminus. And I think that's based off of more so the chemistry between them and how they were very adaptable on the pitch. They were very quickly able to identify, even if these players might have not have even been the first string players in a normal tournament. I'm not sure how that works out, but everyone on that pitch was able to identify the weaknesses in Lost Boys strategy, regardless of whether or not Lost Boys was at full strength or not. And that's a key skill that any team needs to have that will give them that bump up. So if you're looking at 2 top teams and one team is able to do that, I would pick that team probably over the other top team. If they're head to head and people are like, it's a toss up, look at their adaptability, because we saw here, Lost Boys consistently left their ball carriers open or left the midline kind of unprotected, but then kept passing back there. And Terminus took advantage of every single time. And we saw so many interceptions that led to goals. And it wouldn't have been this close for Terminus. I think they were very exhausted. It would not have been close for Terminus in this game against Lost Boys if they hadn't banked on that. I think that Lost Boys would have won by a larger margin if they weren't making these mistakes on the pitch.
Terminus went into this game with more cohesive gameplay than Lost Boys. Lost Boys had to pick up the pace as they played, and eventually they did. And in the end, honestly, I feel like it was only the last 10 minutes, if that, like 8 to 10 minutes maybe of gameplay, that Lost Boys really turned it around. And I feel like in some situations it was just pure luck with that goal being after the snitch was caught. I mean, you look at overall gameplay, and Terminus is the one that has those beautiful connections on offense. Terminus is the one that has that perfect timing on defense with making those hits. Terminus was the one for most of Snitch on Pitch that is playing connected. Like you just see them meshing together in a much more meaningful way than Lost Boys was. I wish I could have been on that field. I would have loved to play with Doug, but even that in itself speaks to the adaptability of Lost Boys. Doug and Max did not play together. They were not adaptable with each other. Or they didn't play together well. They were not adaptable with each other. I feel like of the partnerships that were out there, Max and Maya were probably the most connected pair that we watched. And Maya being a very methodical player, I think that it almost didn't do what Lost Boys needed, because Lost Boys needed to have that aggression on offense, that aggression on defense to make those turnovers, with the biggest connection being Max and Maya, a pair that doesn't typically do that. I think Lost Boys had a lot of missed opportunities. Yeah, love my team, but we have a lot of growth to do looking at that game. Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, I feel like a lot of my analysis focused on play-by-play to where I wasn't thinking more of the overall. I definitely think that Terminus, especially just knowing that they came with a 14-person roster, to be able to keep up with a hometown team where most players live literally driving distance or like close by, to face that jet lag and lagging roster says a lot to them. And that's something to always be counted on. And, you know, that's why you look at nationals sometimes when you compare where people come from based off of where the location is, tends to have an effect.
Yep.
That's why we really need that Salt Lake City Nationals. Just for my own points, as I didn't really spend too much time watching beforehand, but so that game ended with a 140-120 score after we had 2 polls, and I think that's reflective of the fact that our seekers really stepped up to the game of having both of those. Kendrick was both of those polls, but through
and if I could say, without beater support, I mean, yes, there was some, but not much, not what Terminus was giving.
But I also want, like, as Sofia said earlier, that we had a lot of analysis people. Analyzers, thank you. A lot of analyzers had started to give Lost Boys an edge because of Tony. And like I said earlier, for us going into that game, I don't know about the rest of the team, but me as a captain who loves everyone on my team's abilities, I was like, we're screwed. Like, there's no way we have a chance. After we just went to OT with them with Tony, we have no chance of taking them all without Tony.
Tony's a nice factor.
So I think it was really, so while I completely agree, Terminus, I believe, outplayed us, I think it's hard when you're comparing a hitting team versus a passing team, because I think if we play any passing team, our game is totally different. We are not a hitting, we are not an aggressive, full contact team. Very few of our players can make those hits the way that Terminus can. And so that's not our skill set at all, and you obviously saw that throughout this, like how many drives they had. But for me, my biggest takeaway of that game, and to this day that I will continue to say, is that I am Tony's number 1 fan. I have three favorite keepers, and my top 2 are George and Tony. So to play on a team with them at a tournament is like a dream come true for me. All I need to do is get Cameron in there too, but that's irrelevant. But to see us still be able to compete without Tony and have literally the exact same score was still an incredible feeling coming from us, where we didn't think we had I did not think we had a shot going into that game. So I don't know how to really pulled it out after so much sloppy gameplay. Our seekers really held it down for us. Kendrick really held it down for us with our beater support. Obviously, I don't want the Lost Boys to watch this and be like, you hate us, because we don't. But realistically, it's not our best game. But just the fact alone that we can play this high contact team without the keeper that was supposed to change our game entirely and come out with the exact same score was something that I walked away really proud of. More than the fact that we had won, just the fact that we could do it without him was pretty great.
I think also, I love Tony and all. He's a great player, but the fact of the matter is he didn't practice with y'all the entire season.
He actually did. He
or
came
like
to
the entire season.
yeah,
Like,
he came
he
to
wasn't
more
like
practices
a
than
lost boy.
No.
And that makes a difference when you're playing these high level games.
We got back to playing our own game.
Yeah, and like Tony was great, and I fucking love Tony so much. But like that has to say with team chemistry is that as much of a star player can have an impact, if they're not in sync with the rest of the team, that impact just drops as much. Like they don't have as much of an impact, as much as that star level power, if they're not used to being in cohesion with the rest of the team.
I think a lot of analysts also, and they tend to assume this about Tony a lot. They have this assumption that the only reason why Tony isn't as successful as he could be is because he isn't on a team with as much star power as he is at that level at. But many of them forget that Tony is not really at his peak anymore. And this is not to say he's not a good player anymore. He's still a fantastic player. But, you know, like you guys were talking about, he's not a lost boy.
Yeah.
This was the first tournament he was playing all season. And I mean, it goes to show that like even Tony not at his best is still a great player. But like, I don't think that the level of like impact that he was going to have on Lost Boys gameplay is as exaggerated as analysts stated it would be at the beginning. And that's because I think so many of them continue to believe that the only reason why Tony isn't successful is because he doesn't have the team that he needs to have. When a lot of it, at least nowadays, is he isn't as committed to the sport anymore. And it's not because he doesn't love the sport anymore or that he's not good, but like, you know, there is a time that you're going to stop taking Quidditch as seriously as you did in the past. And I think that maybe Tony was at his peak, maybe we would see the sharp contrast in the two games, but we don't, because Tony is not a god as much as like he likes to say it. And
how dare you?
I love to see it, but you know, that's the reality of this tournament is that that's not the case.
Okay. 2 points. Tony being at practice when he was there, speaking to Krieger's point about the team chemistry, when he was at practice, his contribution was considerable. He brought quite a bit of insight and quite a bit of there's something that happens when he's there where just everybody lights up and then just the field becomes more cohesive. And I think in a way he taught us how to play together in some of those moments on offense. You know, that's his strat. I mean, of course he's an excellent defensive keeper, but where he really shines is on offense. And I think having him at practices here and there was nice for our offense because it allowed us to help build that chemistry. So although he didn't build that chemistry with us, I think he helped spark some of it in some instances. And then my second point, I think the difference between the two games, starting out with Tony against Terminus and then losing Tony for the second game with Terminus, speaks to Azim's talent, skill, Azim's way of working with a roster and swapping things around when they don't work and making things better. I look at beaters, that's who I am. I'm a beater, I focus on beaters. Switching Doug and Max to Doug and Michael, and then having Max be ready to sub in was, in my opinion, the best decision of that entire game. Because, I mean, those are things that good coaches notice, that when you're in the heat of the moment in a game, not every player sees. And having Azim on the sidelines for that, not only calling out moments that needed to be thought about by the refs or by the players and keeping us together on the sidelines. I mean, his voice and his influence held us together so that we could make that pull in the end and come out on top. if anything, we went in with the skill that we started out in the first game. And I think probably Azim helped us focus that skill.
Just to touch one more piece on Tony, I know he didn't play this game, so I know we just harped on him forever, but I'm going to continue to harp on it. Part of the reason, I was the person who kind of brought Tony into this roster, and that was so very intentionally because we lost Michael Richardson, who was going to be out of town, and he's been playing with us all season. But with Tony's addition was added the week of. It was not a premeditated twist that we wanted to bring into other teams. It was within days of the tournament when George started.
3 days.
Yeah, it was very, and George has started to get sick. We lost Michael, and we had Fernandez and Miguel. Fernandez is also one of our key seekers, and Miguel had been playing chaser all season, and we really just didn't want to risk our keepers. And granted, these last 2 games, the scores are the exact same. If we didn't have Tony, I don't think we would have won either of those games, because George and Fernandez, who are kept primarily in both those games, would have been at a completely different level. George, I have spent a lot of time with George Williams and in my lifetime, and I have never seen him like I saw him for the HVI weekend. He was truly at a different place. I've never seen someone so sick, and he played through it as much as he could, but he's always been a player who's pull me out because I'm not going to sub out. And the fact that we just saw Anthony Hawkins sub in as keeper, who Anthony's a great keeper, no complaints, but that just is a reflection of how unable George was to play. And if we didn't have Tony, even though these games were the same score, I don't think we would have made it past game 2 with keeping George and Fernandez at that same energy. So we can say Tony's not really an effect, but he was in a different way for us, honestly. So
I think that does play into the part of roster management throughout the tournament, and how important that is. It's resting people and getting people to play, and how much that can have an effect. Tony playing early on and taking those minutes allowed George to play those minutes that he could in this game. And I just had a couple things left to say about Tony. Is one, y'all talk about him going at practice and lighting things up. Is that he's just a great teacher. Because he's such a phenomenal player and does care about the game, he's always willing to teach new people. My first year on Gambits was, I think, the year I developed the most, a lot because of him being a teacher and so many experienced people. And the second part is, I know y'all talked about Tony not having as much interest or heart in Quidditch these days. And, when you find a hobby that gets you paid, like Hero Clicks, that doesn't hurt your body, shit, I would do it too.
Yeah, for sure.
Disclaimer.
And they're good.
Disclaimer. My comments about Tony come from a multitude of different perspectives. Tony was literally my mentor since I was 14 years old, and I would not be the Quidditch player I was in my prime without the fundamentals and coaching that he gave me during that time. So, my comments are coming from a place where it's I've seen Tony at his peak. And so that's how come I don't believe that him at this tournament was his peak. I think that if he decided that he wanted to get back into it full time, I'm sure we'd see him back at peak level, because that is the type of person Tony is.
Yeah. I think we can all agree that Tony at this tournament was not peak. He didn't play all season. He's a great player, but we've seen him at better, and we know he can do better. That's okay.
Yeah, he's certainly still a top tier player, but you just know he went from being one of the best to being a top tier player. There's a difference there, but yeah. All right, that was great. Sofia had brought up the idea to kind of, as the 4 of us, provide MVP players from both teams. So we're going to do that. Sofia, if you want to start, because it was your idea, please feel free.
Yeah, so I picked 1 player for Lost Boys and 2 for Terminus, but that's just because I'll elaborate later that I think that those 2 players really played well off each other. But so for Lost Boys, my MVP pick in this shit show of a game, I think, would have to be Ashley Gore, number 33. And another disclaimer, she is my former roommate. There is not a bias here in terms of like, oh, I lived with her for a year. But the fact that Ashley on UCLA played beater for only a year. And before that, she'd only been playing Quidditch for one season where she was playing chaser. She made the adjustment to playing beater for UCLA and then went into her first season of Lost Boys where she was expecting to learn more from veteran players and ended up being a first string beater for Lost Boys. She stepped up to the plate, and if anything, watching that footage, I think there was only really one dumb play I noticed, and I think we pointed out earlier in this analysis, which is where she had that close range beat on Sean, and he didn't even notice her, and she had missed. But literally every other play I saw in that, she was hustling to the ball, and she was making those smart moves. She was trying to adapt to every beating partner that she had, and I think that in a tournament where Lost Boys' top female beater is not available to play, she stepped up to the plate to the point where I did not see that much of a difference in play style between Ashley and Emma. And that also kind of goes to the fact of Emma's great coaching abilities right there. Because I mean, it's kind of hard to emulate her. She's been playing for so long that, you know.
My gosh, stop it.
Okay, this is not like a circle jerk. I'm sorry. But no, but for real, I think that she kept Pagoda on his toes the entire time that they were playing. You know, like we were talking about throughout this entire analysis, that Sean is a top tier player, and we saw that he is an amazing beater, yet Ashley caught him by surprise multiple times. And I don't know if that's because he underestimated her or, you know, she's good, like, honestly, and I can't wait to see where she kind of grows from there. Especially as we've talked about, this is not a good example of high tier Quidditch, but I think she stepped up to the plate during this match.
Yeah.
In terms of Terminus, the reason why I say two people is because, and I've already kind of mentioned them already, but Lee Hodge and Quincy Hildreth on Terminus, they are number 34 and 8 respectively. They were consistently positioned perfectly on offense. Whether it was just one of them on the pitch or both of them, they were making those perfect drives. They were, like as Krieger was saying earlier, were there on those drives to also be passing options, and we saw those crisp passes. It was never panic at the hoops when they were on the pitch. It was always clear, concise, thoughtful passes and moves by the two of them. So that is why I picked them as MVPs. I think that the two of them really kept the score in range. I think without them, regardless of Sean Pagoda's amazing beating abilities and keeping his team together, they wouldn't have kept in range this game if it wasn't for the two of them.
So my point first off to start is not to discredit your point, Sofia, because but more so it is to highlight that I worked with Ashley a lot over the past season. And I wanted to point out there were a couple moments. Ashley, if you are watching this, please take this to heart. You are incredible. And I think you are MVP material 100%. From this game, there were a couple notes where I noticed that Ashley had a couple points where Ashley was making the right move, but maybe not so much in the way that it ended up being in her, like, for example, when she kicked a bludger back, it ended up going off pitch, or when she beat a player on the back, it ended up going straight up in the air and then bouncing off somewhere where she couldn't get to it right away. So Ashley's making those right moves. And the reason that I would pick Max Portillo, so I have two MVPs as well, Max Portillo and Sean Pagoda from originally from USF and then now from Terminus. I just think that each of those beaters, although they had moments where they weren't connecting with their partners, although Sean, I'm not sure if I would even say that. Max, although he wasn't necessarily always connecting with his partner individually, he made the right moves at the right times as a beater. And when he did make those moves and when he attempted to do the quote unquote right thing as a beater in that moment, he finished and he executed on those moves. And that was almost, I would say, without fail. And then Sean Paguada, I mean, just looking at his play, I talked a lot about him in this analysis. The thing that stands out to me with Sean is not only his adaptability, but his athleticism and his way of connecting with the player that he's with is just, in this game, outclassed by any beater that was on the field. I think most beaters that we watched were incredible, and I tend to look at beaters in gameplay. Most of the time when I watch gameplay, I'm watching beaters, and so that's where my MVPs are coming from. But yeah, good job with Max and Sean. Those are my two picks.
So for me, I think my picks are for Terminus, Quincy. He was very regularly a dominating force on the pitch. He was a great quaffle player, and I saw a lot of pump fakes and connections that went well. But also, Quincy is Terminus's coach. And I think it benefited Lost Boys a bit that they had coaches that were non-playing. But Quincy had to try to keep this team together and strategy-wise while playing, while also coaching. It's so hard. It's so much more difficult. And I think the fact that the team was able to stick together and be competitive with him playing so many minutes says a lot to his coaching ability and playing ability. So that's why I have him as my MVP for Terminus. And Kendrick is my MVP for the Lost Boys because, one, he caught both snitches. That in and of itself is a very great feat for an overtime game. But also he had a lot of great plays. He won the run-up. He had a lot of great connections. He's just overall very athletic and great player. And to see him out there doing so well is, I think, the reason why I would give him MVP.
And then for me, I have like 1.5. Oh my god. For Terminus, I think for after playing in the tournament, we had talked about this earlier, and Sofia had made a mention about like noticing players, and I agree that. So my MVP first, like my pick is what's their last name? I don't want to say it wrong. I've already lost it on my sheet. One moment. Why can't I see it? Ryan Davis. So just having a player in the gender minority being able to play, and I have played every position on the field. I have within a tournament. I have played keeper, seeker, beater, and chaser. That's my position. And I played them all, and I'm not great at any of them. Like I beat for so long, and it wasn't until I came to Lost Boys where basically I joined a Team USA great team, and they were like, maybe you should not do that anymore. And I was like, okay. So then I started chasing. I know how hard it is to try to play all these positions because they entail so many different things. And so for a player, not only just a player, but for a minority gender player to be able to do all of those things is such a huge asset to a team. And I don't think Terminus would have been able to perform the same way that they did without Ryan's impact. My 1.5 person is Mary Cueva. As Emma had talked about earlier, Mary's incredible. I've known her from Emerson previously, and she's always like this quiet, smaller player who you never really expect to see much from. And then she just has so mmany elite top tier plays, and you're like, damn, that girl can fucking play Quidditch. And she's always been incredible. She's so stagnant in a positive way of she's always been just someone you can always rely on, and you could definitely see that in this game. For Lost Boys, I feel as the person who brought this whole analysis to light, I feel I want to pick a non-male player, but I love our non-male players, and I'm one of them myself included, but I don't think this is anyone's most valuable game that we've seen. I've had some games where I'm I was an asset on this field, and I've seen Cornelia play, and I was she was an asset on this field. And Ashley was for sure, and I totally agree with Sophia's pick, but when it comes down to it, I don't think any of our non-male players, female or non-binary players had their best game. And I agree with Krieger that Kendrick for sure was our MVP. We would not have had a chance to win without Kendrick, and I don't think that between quaffle points and winning winning the run-up. And Fernandez is also an amazing seeker, but Fernandez didn't catch those snitches. And as one of, like, Kendrick he has to be the MVP because he's the, like, when it comes down to it, the reason we won that game and the game before that. So Kendrick's my choice, as much as I wish I could say it was like me or Cornelia or whatever, but it's, as we saw, it certainly was not. So those are my picks.
I would love to see, hopefully, when COVID is over, being able to do this type of live analysis on this season's teams, just because I think, especially in this last year, I think that the conversation around women and non-binary players have really evolved to a point where a lot more of us are willing to have these discussions and seek out that personal growth within us. And it's sad because, you know, before COVID hit, we had the second Glorious Bitches tournament happening. We had a bunch of like women and non-binary only tournaments happening all across the US in different areas. You know, we had training camps set up. We had all these feedback threads for people for when they go back to practice to be able to put that advice into action. And so it kind of sucks that, you know, obviously I think that COVID will impact this season. And, you know, we might not even see a season this year. And it's really disappointing to see, just because as players who are kind of behind the scenes in that part of the community and seeing these conversations happening, I would have loved to have been a part of analysis of footage from a game this season where we see these specific players putting it into action. Because like you said, Lindsey, as much as we want to be able to highlight specific women and non-binary players that really outperformed, at least with this game, and I'm sure with a lot of footage that we do have from this last season, we're not going to see that. And it's really sad to say, but I'm hoping that maybe even on this specific series that we do film from outside of our region, just as we know West does not have great film. Just
options.
Yeah, just so we can highlight those who are kind of performing above and beyond, because they do deserve recognition, and that's something that we've discussed a lot of times, like behind the scenes. So looking forward to what the rest of this series has to offer, but I'm also looking forward to the next season that we'll be able to have new film, because I really think that this generation of Quidditch players is really hungry to learn.
Speaking to that point a little bit, it's just having been on both sides, or like on the spectrum, both sides of the spectrum in gender, starting out Quidditch as a male player and then continuing and transitioning and now ending up as a female player, you know, bringing players who are female or non-binary or gender non-conforming into this conversation is scary for a lot of us, because it is so male dominated that we often feel like our opinions aren't as valid. And I can tell you from previously, before my transition, oftentimes I felt like my opinions were not even that great, but they were being treated way higher than they should have been, and or as way more meaningful than they should have been. When I didn't bring up a great point, just because I was seen as male, people listened to me more. And so I think this series is a really great opportunity to bring those people who are not male into this conversation and have them bring up these great points that they probably have but may be afraid to say. So I'm really excited to see where this goes, and I really hope that we have a season where people can commentate and continue this, because this is a great idea for a series. Yeah,
I've definitely felt that, and I know one of the things I was most excited for this season was helping UCLA Quidditch and being somewhat of a coach. I don't want to say being a coach, because then that I feel that puts so much pressure on me, but somewhat of a coach, helping them in that, you know, I know a lot of the older players, people that I've known, respect me a lot, probably purely because like I've played as male and been playing a long time, but I wanted to come back with the focus on developing every player, on developing a lot of the female and gender non-conforming players that tend to get left behind sometimes, that they get pigeonholed into certain roles. Whereas we recognize that if we develop them in all roles, they can be so much more effective, and that as a team, so much more better. So hopefully I still get to do that, but it's one of those things that it's hard to get to.
To wrap this up, this has been a very successful, in my opinion, first session of BAC. We should get like a breathalyzer to like test our blood out. I don't know if you notice this, but everyone is drinking during these. We're taking ourselves seriously, but also having a lot of fun because we have nowhere else to go. This is Analysis Corner. We are going to continue to do this. And if you're watching this as a cis male player, I would like you to take a moment to like really reflect on the voices that you're hearing on your own team. And I can tell you, I have been in leadership in Quidditch for a very long time through different teams and resources. And there are very few opportunities where I feel I don't want you to see this and think that like cis male are like telling me I can't speak, but it's just I don't have the confidence as a female player in this sport to think that my opinions are valid. And I will say that bluntly and honestly. Maybe it's because I'm like 4 drinks in, maybe it's because I want to make a difference, but when it comes down to it, like I'll be at a practice with the Lost Boys, who are my family, my home, everything that I've ever loved, and I'll have a player on my own team ask me a strategy question, like, what can I be doing here? Or like, why isn't this working? And I'll be like, go ask Brinton or Azim. Like, I do not trust my own strategic capabilities. And I think that, and as a player who's been playing for 7 years, I should. And I think that has to do with that. So if you are a male and you're watching this, I want you to take a moment and reflect on the voices that you're listening to on your team and the opportunities that you are presenting for voices to come up for your team. And I think that's what we want as the biggest takeaway from this. I'm hoping to continue to host many of these and to bring a lot of game film and people into this. I have another one planned already, so hopefully we'll get some popping out in different forums soon. Thank you if you have taken the time to watch all of this. I don't know what our final timestamp is going to be, but this is certainly going to be a very long video. And if you've made it through this whole thing, like, congrats to you. So thank you. Thank you to these amazing people who have joined me tonight. And I hope you found some value in it. And I hope that you take a moment to reflect on your experience in Quidditch and how the female and non-binary players are involved in that. Anyone else want to say anything?
Where can we find everyone on social media?
So I'm going to make a YouTube channel once we get this, first of all, and it's going to be called, I don't know what YouTube will let me call a channel. I'm not far yet, but I'll leave it in the description. I'm going to point down because that's what the description is on a YouTube video. But it's going to be some form of a bitches analysis corner. You can find me personally on Facebook and at Lindsey Simpson, like combined on Instagram and Twitter.
I was going to say my Facebook is Christian Krieger. I don't think I ever said my first name at all this entire
that's because no one uses
thing.
that.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. And Krieger Oside 70, Krieger. Oside 70 is my Snapchat and Instagram, and if you want my Twitter, it's CJ Krieger.
My name is Jamie Emma Luba. Wine. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Jamie Emma Luby, and you can find me on Facebook with that name, and also on Instagram as Emma_J Luby.
You can find me on Facebook, Sofia Del Vega. Yes, Sofia Del Vega Photography. Also, I don't really take pictures anymore, but feel free to follow that page also. Everywhere else, I am at Awkward Sophia with an F.
Amazing. All right. Again, thank you to everyone who tuned in. This is going to be a long, now that you've watched, this was a long video, so pat yourself on the back for getting through it. I'm glad you watched this mediocre game of Quidditch with us, and I hope you had a good time. And that's it.
Can I
cheers.
just suggest one last cheers?
A cheers.
As Azim and I say, salute.
Oh no, not that, anything but that. Bye everyone.